Every year, thousands of people disappear without a trace in the world. It happens that among the missing are famous, outstanding people who literally disappear under the most mysterious circumstances. But before I get to the video, I want to recommend you my new channel Visioner Crime, where I tell about interesting and criminal stories and mysterious disappearances, shocking crimes in the USA and Europe. I am sure you will not be bored. Follow the link that appeared in the upper right corner. Also, the link to the channel I have placed in the description to this video. So, let's continue. In the mid-1880s, dozens of engineers worked on the invention of the cinematograph, from representatives of major companies to self-taught individuals. Inventor Thomas Edison was considered the favorite in this race, thanks to the generous financing of his experiments. But somehow unexpectedly Edison was overtaken by his French competitor Louis Leprince, who created the world's first movie camera. The demonstration of a test film took place in early October 1888. 7 years before the official birth of cinematography, it was a so-called scene in the Garden of Round Hay, lasting about 2 seconds. All the Frenchman had to do was to patent his invention and get subsidies for development. To this end, he immediately went to America, where, according to unverified reports, he even met Edison himself. After returning from his trip, Leprince visited his relatives in Dijon, after which he took a train to Paris, where he took a train to London to formalize his invention there. But in Paris, Leprince's compartment was empty. The search on the way did not stop, and at the train station the inventor was met by porters, who had been specially arranged in advance. However, neither the luggage nor the passenger was present. It was impossible in those days for Leprince to leave the compartment while it was in motion. The doors of each compartment opened outward to the platform and were blocked on departure. The most interesting thing is that not only Leprince was missing, but also his miracle equipment, about which the French newspapers had time to spread the word. Station clerks in Dijon swore that they saw the passenger depart, and in Paris an equally numerous company testified that the compartment was empty. Soon the whole story with the moving pictures was called a hoax and the inventor a fraud who had gone into hiding to avoid embarrassment. Versions of the disappearance were many, very many inclined to believe that it was machinations of Edison, whose business in 1890 were going badly, the experiments did not bring results, and competition in the face Leprince could even lead to a loss of funding. Gradually, passions subsided, only the family of the missing French engineer continued to search. In 1902, Alphonse Leprince's eldest son came to New York to meet Edison and ask him if he had seen Leprince in the fall of 1890. But the day after his arrival, Alphonse Leprince was found shot dead in his hotel room. No weapon was found near the body. The door was locked from the inside. The police could not get to the bottom of it, and Leprince Jr.'s death remained a mystery. Vladimir Alexandrov, a Soviet scientist at the Academy of Sciences of the Soviet Union who led work on modeling the global climatic consequences of nuclear war, was a very active and sociable person, as they say, the soul of the company. He was appreciated for his extraordinary charisma and openness. In 1983, as a theorist of the so-called nuclear winter, he presented a report to a group of scientists where he convincingly proved that even the use of 30% of the then existing nuclear weapons, putting life on Earth at risk. Alexandrov's predictions were an order of magnitude more pessimistic and frightening relative to those of his foreign colleagues. In 1985, Vladimir Alexandrov took part in a conference in Spain with a report on nuclear winter. Before returning to Moscow, he decided to take a walk, left his hotel, and disappeared. No one else saw him. According to the main version of Disappearance, the physicist was kidnapped by special services. In December 1985, the USSR Academy of Sciences made a special announcement concerning the disappearance of Vladimir Alexandrov. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the USSR embassies in Spain repeatedly appealed to the Spanish authorities, but the efforts yielded no results. The mystery of the disappearance of the Soviet scientist has not yet been solved. Rudolf Diesel, German engineer, creator of the internal combustion engine named after him, in 1897 at a factory in Augsburg, the first diesel engine was created. The efficiency of such an engine was about 26%, which was much higher than that of steam engines. This engine received popular acclaim, and when it was presented at the 1898 Munich exhibition of steam engines, licenses for its production bought up in large quantities. Production of the diesel engine required high precision of parts and the use of new heat-resistant materials, which many of the then existing factories could not afford, and the first diesels simply refused to work. Diesel's Augsburg factory went bankrupt and he stopped being paid royalties on his patents. As a result, Diesel was forced to ask for help from other countries. The financial crisis of 1913 finally ruined him, but Diesel still had hopes for a favorable outcome. On September 29, 1913, he boarded the steamer Dresden and headed for London to open his new factory. At 11 o'clock in the evening, after dinner in the ship's restaurant, the scientist wished his companions a good night and went to his cabin. In the morning it was empty. All searches on the ship were unsuccessful. There are several versions of the disappearance. One is that Rudolf Diesel fell off the ship during a heart attack. A body resembling his was fished out the next day. The fishermen who fished out the corpse buried the body according to nautical tradition, and once again the body of the inventor could not be found. But in addition to the fall overboard, there is another much more frightening version. After Diesel's death, his family somehow managed to make financial arrangements. Allegedly, they sold the patents of the disappeared head of the family. There were 3 witnesses in the case, 2 of Diesel's friends and a steward. All of them are united in their testimony. The night before his disappearance, Rudolf Diesel locked himself in his cabin. It is telling that the steamship's passenger lists did not contain Diesel's name, and of the belongings of Rudolf Diesel found on the ship, there is not a single item that belongs to him with 100% certainty. It is as if everything suggests that the inventor never entered the ship. After all the witnesses to Diesel's disappearance may have been interested in hiding the truth. In the fall of 1961, young Michael Rockefeller, the richest heir in the United States, embarked on a dangerous and exciting journey to New Guinea. Michael and his companion, the Dutch ethnographer René Wassing, hired local guides and drove around Aboriginal settlements, bartering for steel hooks and axes for Papuan household items and art. The young scholars had amassed quite a collection, but they weren't going to stop there. Wassing and Rockefeller decided to go to the lost village of the Asmats, the local bloodthirsty tribe, to find their unique artifacts. The young scientists and their guide decided to reach the remote Asmatist village by river on a catamaran. At the beginning of the trip was successful enough, then the boat ran into a rough stream, which slammed water into the boat, the motor flooded and it stalled. There were many crocodiles in the area, and the men were hesitant to leave their safe haven. The distance to shore was about 3 kilometers, and Rockefeller sent his guide swimming for help. All reached solid ground, but were lost in the jungle. Were found several days later. Michael and René waited unsuccessfully for help. Suddenly a huge wave pummeled the catamaran and overturned it. René clung to the wreck, and Michael shouted to him that he would swim to shore. Wassing refused to follow him and watched as his companion disappeared over the horizon. A few hours later, Wassing discovered the seaplane. All forces were thrown into the search for Michael. All the surrounding woods were combed, the river bottom was examined, and the natives were questioned, but there was no trace of Michael Rockefeller. The search was called off. Many believe that Rockefeller may have successfully swam to shore as guides who avoided encountering crocodiles and survived. Wassing, after spending many hours in the water, was also not attacked by predators. Rockefeller was an excellent swimmer and simply could not have drowned. The most common version of the death of the heir to millions is that he was eaten by Aborigines. Allegedly, he made it safely to shore, but was in the hands of a wild tribe. This version is based on the words of the Christian missionary Ian Smith, whose mission was located near the Asmat village. He claimed that he had once seen the astronaut carrying the clothes of the missing Rockefeller, and that they had also shown him the bones that supposedly belonged to the missing young man. Another missionary claimed that the natives had also told him about a certain murdered young man who had been eaten by a certain tribe. The most interesting thing about this young man's skull is that it has the peculiarity of having iron eyes. The missionary stated that this is what the Aboriginal called the metal Rockefeller glasses, which he never took off. But no one has been able to find this skull with the iron eyes, and the mystery of Michael Rockefeller's death has never been solved. The unexplained disappearance of Harold Holt, Australia's 17th Prime Minister, is one of the most sensational of the 20th century, shocking the world no less than the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Although he had been Prime Minister for only 22 months, Holt was one of the most prominent political figures in Australia and all of Western politics at the time of his disappearance. Holt disappeared on December 17, 1967. The Prime Minister, with his friends, accompanied by his bodyguards, poisoned himself in Port Phillip Bay. Holt wanted to swim, so he and his friends headed for a sparsely populated beach on the oceanfront. The weather was not ideal for swimming. The wind was blowing and the current was too strong. The friends did not share Holt's wish to swim in the sea. They tried to dissuade him too, but the Prime Minister, who was famous as an excellent swimmer and diver, did not heed their warnings. He resolutely made his way to the sea, dove into the water, and swam. Soon he was out of sight. The alarmed bodyguards rushed after him, but they could not find Harold Holt in the water. Immediately, the police, professional military divers, and divers were called in. Meter by meter, they surveyed the seabed. Dozens of helicopters were monitoring from the air. The search operation was the largest in Australian history, but it yielded no results. Initially, the police assumed that the Prime Minister had been tracked down, captured as he sailed, and drowned by his political opponents. But the absence of a body was not in favor of this version. To this day, the case is one of the major mysteries of Australian forensic science. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and write what you think about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to me.